No mai, welcome to the hui. Please join me starting off with the karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. For any members that do need to briefly leave, please let me or the Democracy Services Advisor know, just so we can make a note of it in the minutes. First of all, we will accept apologies. So far, we have apologies for early departure from the Mayor. Does anyone else have apologies? It appears we have none. I would like to move that motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Randall, thank you. Councillor Riawati. Pauiwi Hohaia. It's all right, a slow start this morning.
We're all here.
We're all here. Fantastic. It's been approved. I now call on any members who need to declare a conflict of interest for the items in today's agenda. I see none. I'll move the motion for the previous minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Randall again, thank you very much. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2. Much faster, we're getting better. I declare the motion carried. There are no items that are not on the agenda, but I will just draw all of the committee and the members of the public's attention to the fact that there was one item removed from the agenda. This was the proposed road closure 2.5. As the terms of reference allow the Chief Executive to approve this if there are no objections, and since there were no objections received, this does not need to be considered by the committee, so it will not be debated today. At the end of this meeting, we will also consider a public excluded paper. The reason we will be going into public excluded is to protect the privacy of natural persons. With that being said, we'll have morning tea around 10 past 10 a.m. And we can move into public participation. I believe we have Bernadette here from the Tower Business Group to speak to item 2.2, Traffic Resolution 126. Thanks for coming along, Bernadette. Just make sure you press the button so there's a green light. You've got 10 minutes, and if you want to have any sort of questions from the committee, that'll need to be in that time as well. So over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you to Councillor Rogers and to the Deputy Councillor Randall and to the Mayor, Andrew Little, and to members of the committee for having me here today. My name's Bernadette Pallister. I am the bid manager for the Tower Business Group, and I'm here today to talk very briefly about the TR01 mobility parking within Tower. So the Tower Business Group has 122 property owners, and within those 122 properties, we have over 180 business owners. Now, during this submission, I spoke to many of our business owners about the mobility parking, but in particular, I spoke to a lot of members who had either used mobility parking spaces themselves or had family members that use mobility parking spaces. So about 3 years ago, the Tower Business Group did a review of the parking spaces that we have within Tower. You can see within the black circle, we have about 330 public parking spaces, which includes about 14 mobility spaces. Now, up until about 5 o'clock last night, I thought we had 4,000 badge holders within Tower. When I spoke to CCS Disability Action, it turns out there's 380 mobility spaces. That's quite a difference, possibly changes my presentation, but we'll go with it. So we still do support the additional mobility space within Tower and within the town centre. Now, my presentation today is going to be in response to the officers' response to my submission. And one of the key things that came through their response was the fact that it costs about $7,000 to lower the curb. Now, I love the fact that you guys are now thinking about costs. I think it's fantastic. But I don't think that accessibility planning should be driven primarily about avoiding infrastructure costs. The distribution of mobility parking is a functional accessibility issue, not a numerical one. Accessibility is about location, it's not about numbers. So we'd be looking at a long-term accessibility plan, which would be more appropriate than incremental cost-driven placements. Now, this slide came in about 5 o'clock last night when I'd spoken to CCS Disability Action. Their thoughts, they hadn't seen the proposal prior to me giving it to them yesterday. Their issues with this particular proposal is that the additional space, which would be on the right-hand side of the top photo, would be that somebody coming out of their car would have to walk with their wheelchair or whatever, mobility aids, around the back of the car to access the drop curb. So they don't really think that this is an appropriate use of that space. The other issue that I'd like to talk about is the P120 proposal. We don't feel that this is appropriate or inclusive. People with mobility issues tend to not just pop out to the shops. They will do a number of different tasks while they're there. They'll stop and have coffee for a bit of a rest and then carry on with their day. Obviously, it takes mobility users generally a lot longer to get in and out of their cars. We do have issues with part-time staff working in Tower who wouldn't be able to use the space. I've spoken to the CCS disability guys yesterday, and they don't like mobility spaces being used all day, so they kind of like the idea of turnover. But we've got part-time staff that work a couple of hours, and those spaces are quite good for them to use just for a couple of hours kind of thing. So this proposal is not consistent with other mobility spaces we have within Tower. All of the other, we've got 17, I think, spaces in the whole of Tower. All of them are unrestricted, so we would like this particular space to be unrestricted as well. Now, I'm going to get a little bit personal. Tony knows this very well, that this time last year I had a total knee replacement and I was given a mobility temporary badge for 6 months. I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I've got some independence. I can go back to work. And it turns out I can't because I couldn't find anywhere to park. So it's often those mobility spaces aren't really where you want them, so they're never in the right place. So putting two together doesn't actually create any more accessibility. It just has two places in the same place. It's not having them spread out throughout the town centre. So I spoke to Rula, and Rula very kindly has joined me today to support me. She is the bid manager. She looks after all the bids within Wellington. I spoke to her and I said, is there any chance that I could use a regular space for extra time? And it turns out that you can only really use them for 2 hours instead of the 1. So this kind of excludes people from working if they can't park close to their place of work. So this is a thing I'd like to touch on quite briefly, and Tony and I have spoken about this before, and I've had quite in-depth conversations with Rula around this. There's a collaboration between Wellington City Council and the business improvement districts. Now, there are 6 business improvement districts across Wellington. The bid managers know their bid areas better than most people. So what we would advocate for is for the Wellington Council officers to work more closely with the bids before the traffic resolution consultation process starts. I call it the does it make sense test. So the council officers would have looked at this space and gone, we can put 2 spaces close together, there's a drop-down curb, this will be fantastic, this will solve all the problems. You give it to somebody like me and I'd go, well, actually, it would be better if there's one further north. Give it to CCS Disability and they go, well, actually, the person's going to have to walk all the way around the car. That's not actually safe. So it's that kind of, does it make sense? And talking to us before the consultation process starts. So my recommendations is that we look at having something like a long-term accessibility plan rather than just going, oh, well, this sounds like a good idea, we'll put that here. Installing a mobility park further north, maybe near Urban Eatery. We don't have any mobility parks any further north than where this one is being proposed. The Urban Eatery is a particular popular cafe within Tower, so it would be good to have a mobility space further north. I would strongly recommend having no time restrictions on any of the mobility parks. We don't have them now. I wouldn't see why this one would have a time restriction on it. I'm working very closely with CCS Disability Action. Now, I spoke to 3 people there yesterday. They were fantastic. They were really helpful. So taking their ideas on board before the traffic resolution was put into place would be a good idea. And finally, in summary, I'd just like to say that, yes, as the bid manager, the Tower Business Group is more than happy to work very closely with Wellington City Council. We fully support the proposal for extra mobility spaces, just not in this proposed position. And we feel that accessibility should be practical, not symbolic. So if anyone's got, I think this is the bit. If you've got any questions.
Fantastic. Councillor Tiefenbacher, I had you first.
Thanks very much. Hey, so I fully understand the location issue and the logic of money shouldn't be the decider of where accessibility sits. Around the timeframes, though, do you see the purpose of the extra spaces being something for the 360 people who are card holders to be able to use on a regular basis rather than use all day? Because I guess in my mindset, I'm thinking that the businesses might like those car parks to turn over a little bit and to give various people the ability to use them rather than just one person for the source of the day. So do you see that as being the main reason why we would have another mobility park?
Well, I don't think that, I mean, I drove past 2 or 3 this morning, they were all empty. So I don't think the turnover problem is a problem. I know that a lot of people use the normal spaces and the turnover is quite quick. I did speak to a business owner who was parking with their father, and he was really quite concerned and quite anxious about there being a time restriction. And she said, "No, we're fine. We can be here as long as it takes." And I think that's quite important for people with mobility issues to be able to be there as long as it takes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think a 180-minute might be more? I'm just going along the line of if someone uses it all day, obviously that excludes it from all the other mobility users to be able to use it. So therefore, to access the businesses, that's the plan of a main street car park, then we would be restricting that ability for people to use it if people use it on a full day basis.
I mean, I don't personally know how often they're used, and so this is where an accessibility plan would be good to actually go around and see when they're used and how long they're used for. So I can't talk to that, but no, I think people should be able to use them for as long. Well, not necessarily all day. I mean, I found it really. I ended up having to speak to my landlord and say, "Can I park out the front of the building?" And that was the only way that I was able to get round. Finding somewhere to park that was close enough for me to be able to walk to my office. So it's a difficult question. When I spoke to CCS Disability, they would prefer a shorter time. But I don't, yeah.
Yeah, we might have time for one quick question from Mia Little.
Thanks, Bernadette. Thanks for a great presentation. Just quickly, you may have touched on it in your presentation, but do you have an alternative location for a second mobility park?
Kind of. I haven't done the looking at the curbs bit, but I would suggest something a bit further north up near Urban Eatery. Thanks.
Apologies, Councillor Rand, it looks like we have run out of time, but we will have a morning tea break at 10:10 if you want to ask some more questions then. Thank you very much, Bernadette, for coming in. Just checking if we have Justin in the room with us at the moment. No. In that case, Elspeth White is next up. Welcome, Elspeth. Elspeth is here to speak on TR 0326. You've got 5 minutes to speak today, and if you want anyone to ask questions, we'll need to include it in that time as well. So over to you.
Kia ora everyone. Sorry, I'm a wee bit husky, so tell me if I need to raise the volume a little bit. Just here to talk about this traffic resolution pertaining to the lovely Dawson Street, Adelaide Road intersection and how it can be improved. Agree it is quite a badly aligned intersection, and there's no doubt that care needs taking when you are using this intersection. But I do feel that the council's proposals for safety improvements have gone a little bit far in the balance of meeting residents' needs with preserving some more of that car parking and what needs to be done. I live almost on the corner of this intersection, and I've spent many years at home over the last few years with children, and we have a lovely, lovely view down onto it. So I'm kind of intrigued as to how dangerous is it really, because we feel like it is, but when I had a look at the stats, I was a little bit surprised. So there's been 8 accidents over 22 years. This is from Waka Kotahi data. I don't really understand the limitations of that data, but I acknowledge it's probably a little bit imperfect. And 2 of those have been involving bicycles. They were both listed as non-injury or minor. However, in September last year, there was what I would consider a serious accident where somebody did get knocked over as they were travelling down the cycle lane by a turning car. And there was another one in the similar circumstances, but where a car was trying to turn through the queued traffic. So this intersection has got queued traffic a lot more often than it used to. And my perception is this is because of the street changes that have been put in. So now we have the inline bus stops, all the traffic stops, and there's one a little way down the road. So there are cars sitting through the intersection. And so one of those accidents happened with that temptation to wave a car through, so to not be blocking, to make a car come through the gap. But unfortunately, you all understand the sight lines of having the cycle lanes on the left of the queued traffic is actually does impair vision. Obviously, that driver shouldn't have gone, whatever, the cyclist shouldn't have gone either because they were bolting through a blocked intersection, which isn't a good idea with stationary traffic. So totally agree that some safety improvements can be made. I did ask in my submission if we could have some little bit more data, like your data on the accidents kind of before and after the street changes, but I didn't get a response to that. I would like to say that there was a safety audit done by an independent company before the cycleway went in by Via Strata, who are considered leaders in this field. They actually didn't identify this place at all as a hotspot for them on that cycleway stretch, which was also interesting to me. With the cycleway and street changes, WCC did choose to put in a giveaway sign at the intersection, so obviously they felt there was something that needed correcting, and now the proposal is to upgrade that to a stop. Great idea, can't hurt. I wonder if people who don't observe giveaway signs will also not observe a stop sign, but we're trying to cater for the masses, not the people who will keep breaking the rules. I do want to say how I was really upset not to be talked to about this, because I know there are people in this room who know that I used to park outside my house on Adelaide Road, and now I don't. I park halfway up the road on Dawson Street, which is a really difficult street for parking because of its gradient, and it has made my life quite a lot more difficult. So I do just want to make that clear. The proposal has got incorrect measurements. It said there was the residents' parking scheme operated where it didn't. It's got all the hallmarks of kind of being scrambled together, and you do have a big work program. But mistakes like that shouldn't really happen. I'm proposing that you yellow line a smaller distance. At the moment, you don't even have the yellow lines, the minimum 6 metres, and I think that you should do that and leave the 2 car parks alone, because I did want to have time just to say that it is International Women's Day in 4 days. And that probably sounds really irrelevant, but we actually know that women bear more of the caring burden. So every time it feels like there's this attitude from council, oh, it won't really matter, just walk a little bit further. I walk plenty, but I use the car a lot for kids and for caring and for elderly, and that's the impact. So please leave the 2 car parks there. That's time.
Thank you very much, Elspeth. Perfectly on time.
Thank you.
Next up is Steve Cosgrove, who's here to talk to TR 1626. Steve, you've got 5 minutes, and if you want us to ask questions, we'll also need to use that time as well. So over to you.
Kia ora koutou. First time I've addressed you all, and the new council came to be here. Good to thank you for being here. We appreciate the effort all of you put into representing your constituents. Last year, Deputy Mayor McNulty, I think it was, said he never wanted us to name a particular enhancement in Carrara Park again in council chambers. So I will refrain from naming it. But I will say once again, special thanks to Councillors Foon and Abnaham for all their amazing amount of mahi for helping us, supporting the community to get that facility planned and contracted, and we're looking forward to it. Any locals I've spoken to have said we welcome the mobility car park that's planned here. It's an obvious complement to the facility. There's the interesting points I've made. The Tawa Business Group talked about drop-down car parks, and that is drop-down curbing. That is going to be an issue with Regent Street sometimes. So what will happen is that people coming to the park will tend to, if there's a lack of parks in the street, they will park over the entrance to the park, because the fine for that is much less than parking in a mobility space. If they don't, so that's going to make it difficult for someone using the mobility space to get into the park if they are relying on wheels. It's an interesting issue, and perhaps we could extend the drop-down curb across the length of the parking space. There was, of course, a better parking space, a more accessible parking space, except that it was on a slope, so it wasn't appropriate, and that's cool. So all in all, I want to say that the community, any members of the community I've spoken to are keen on the idea. We support it. We thank you again for enhancing our park and providing a resource that should have been there 30 years ago, but it's all okay. We can wait. We're Newtown, we're resilient, and I forgot to say thank you for those watching online. That's why I'm wearing my hat to save you from my bald spot. And there's one other observation I wanted to make. I really have no idea. Where's Paul Barker when you need him? I wonder, we talk about parking a lot. I do wonder how many people actually use garages. There's 6 brand new 4-year-old apartments across the road from us in Regent Street, and none of these 6 people, actually 5 of them, one has a carport, the other 5 have garages, and none of them store a car in their garage. Just all sorts of other things. And this is an ongoing issue. There's, I see it, I was walking down Daniel Street. I could tell you, I think there's something in the order of about 10 garages that I walk past a lot, and 2 of them are used to store cars on a, coming and going basis, whatever that's called. Mostly used to store, they're mostly used for long-term storage or for storing bikes, which is good use for them. But nonetheless, it's a complicated business. I sympathise with Tawa, having the complications that were identified. It's really difficult to do, but I encourage you all to think things through, look at the evidence, and support your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Did anyone have any questions? No, it seems you are very concise. Thank you very much, Steve. I believe Justin has joined us now. Welcome, Justin. Justin is speaking on TR 0326. You've got 5 minutes today, Justin, and if you want us to ask any questions, we'll need to use that 5-minute time for that as well. So,
okay, great. Thanks very much for the opportunity to come along and speak today. I put a couple of slides together. Probably want to just quickly touch on 3 things: consultation, errors and anecdata, and then potentially bias as well. I put this slide together. This is the photo that was provided by council when we're asking why we weren't notified about this change. We live on Adelaide Road and don't have any off-street parking outside our house. And you can see here on the picture that the green boxes highlight the places that officers did a letterbox drop, but I've put arrows to 4 houses there where Dawson Street is the most obvious place to park a car, houses that don't have off-street parking and yet didn't receive a letterbox drop. And I just think that's really disappointing that council can't even be bothered moving 2 houses down from Dawson Street to do a letterbox drop about this change when it's quite material, because all of those 4 houses where the arrows are use that bottom of Dawson Street to park their single car that they use for their household, me being one of them. The other thing, I guess, is if you make a mistake, that's okay. But if you make a mistake and it gets pointed out to you that it's a mistake, and then you don't adjust it and you leave it, it becomes duplicitous, I think. And the statement here in the Takere 3 is that only 10 houses, including 2 on Adelaide Road, don't have need off-street parking. Don't have off-street parking. You can clearly see here I've highlighted just 4 really close houses on Adelaide Road that don't have off-street parking. And this was, in my submission. It's been noted, and your officers decided, despite making other amendments to this resolution, just to leave that in. And I think that's really, really disappointing as well, that they just, just won't, I don't know. It makes it look to me like it's deliberately misleading the situation, because actually there's a lot of pressure on those car parking spaces. I guess that comes down then to sort of the bias where it felt like there were no really other options considered. They immediately jumped into removing car parks as the best solution. If I go to my next slide, maybe I can't. Anyway, I was mixing around. But it felt like, the fact, on the previous slide, that you have got this listed as an improvement as well, and that the very first thing to do was just take parking away, and that's the best way to solve this. Whereas cross-hatching, stop sign, potentially investigating whether the right-hand turn from Luxford to Winchell could have been reintroduced, whether the cycleway, in fact, this is a 250-odd metre cycleway that's got a merge point back in, shared road either side of it. Is it really delivering any benefit? That could have been investigated as well. And then lastly, I guess, just the confusion in here. The resolution says that the outcome's going to be that 5 metres of yellow lines are going to be installed on both sides of Dawson Street. And you can see here, so it's a bit small, but on the right, it says, right, we're going to remove 4.5 metres on the north side and 5 metres on the south side, and then we're going to implement 11 metres on both the north and the south side. Now, I know the council has trouble with numbers and finances, but everyone can see that 4.5 plus 5 does not equal 11, and 5 plus 5 does not equal 11. And if this is the quality of the work that goes into these sorts of things, it's just not really a safe decision for you guys to make, and it's just really disappointing. And then littered through, I guess, the reasoning and the responses from officers, it was just all anecdotes. Some residents have said this, some people have said this, there's crashes here. There's no, what are people supposed to really believe? This intersection is more dangerous now than it was 3 years ago because of the changes that council implemented when putting in the cycleway and the parking policy. And lots of residents at the time pointed out, you're going to push traffic onto Dawson Street with these changes. And council said, no, we've done analysis, there'll be 4 cars extra at peak. Now, you got it wrong then. Who's to say it won't get done wrong again? And I just think as residents, we deserve better. We deserve proper analysis, proper solutioning, no errors, proper consultation. So I think this needs to be looked at again. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Councillor Randall, you had a question.
Yes, previous submitter suggested a more moderate change, which is to put in the 6 metres, the normal 6 metres of yellow lines from the intersection alone. We're leaving perhaps a little more space for car parking up Dawson Street. We need to address the safety issue. Do you think, would you support that?
Yeah, I think, look, it looks like this hasn't been put in properly in the first place. I think that's one of the big problems, that this was a really flawed decision and then it was implemented poorly as well. I measured last night. On the north side, the yellow lines are about 2.8 metres or 3.8 metres or something. It's like, so way short of what should just be standard. So yes, I think maybe if it had been done properly the first time and 6 metres on both sides, you possibly wouldn't be here doing a resolution to make a change. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for coming in today, Justin. Next up, we have Cheryl Constable speaking on TR 0226. Welcome, Cheryl. You've also got 5 minutes to speak today, and if you want us to be able to ask any questions, we'll need to do that in the 5 minutes as well.
Kia ora koutou, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak this morning. I do value that. So, question first, can I ask a question during my speech or not?
Unfortunately, this is just an opportunity for you to present. We can ask questions to you.
You can ask questions to me. Okay, well, I can pose the question. You can decide whether or not to answer. Okay, so I'm an intelligent, well-educated person, 2 master's degrees. When I read the documents about removing bus stops from Rua Street, eek, I was a bit shocked, really, that someone would expect me to believe that accessibility has been improved. Accessibility has been improved by removing 2 bus stops. Well, I mean, I can't believe that. That's just not going to work. And I've just got one little demonstration here now. I know that you'll all be able to see my yellow highlighter. This represents accessibility. This is what we have now in the bus stops in Rua Street. Now I'm just going to remove it. Can you see it better now? No, because it's gone. So I take my hat off to Wellington City Council, who wants to improve accessibility, and this is the promises in here, and we know that that's what Wellington City Council wants to do. I just can't understand how removing 2 important bus stops is going to help that. So secondly, I'll talk about car parking. I'm aware that Wellington City Council has decided that residents are not entitled to free car parking on the street. So when we look at Rua Street, there are lots of people with garages filled with their gym stuff, and they park on the street. Sometimes 2 cars on the street because there's no room in the garage or the carport. There's also quite a few places with really long garages, and I've seen 3 cars parked up there, and they want more on the street. Hello. When we think about accessibility and fit people can park in the next block and walk. People in wheelchairs can't, especially in the storms. Okay. I do want to question why, well, you may choose not or not to answer this at the end, but what's the legal status of a Greater Wellington Regional Council's request? Because this is what this is all about. This has been triggered by their request. So what's the legal status of that? Is the council obliged to react? Are they obliged to follow through and give more car parks to an institution who's not encouraging car parks? I don't know which university you people went to, but that doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, so I don't know if any of you, I don't know. It was only when I went on a course on accessibility that I came to understand the difficulties of these people. So, so I'm going to explain now that, I don't know if you've actually been to Rua Street, but if the proposal is that I'm going to walk it first. You've handed up the, okay. So starting at Onipu Road, so the proposal, the document doesn't actually explain where the person starts. So say I'm leaving town and going home to Lau Bay, and I walk from Onipu Road first.
Apologies, Cheryl. We'll just need you to use the microphone. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I walk from, so the first stop in Rua Street, there, the proposal said to take it away. That's 450 steps and go across 2 streets, cross Onipu Road and cross Freiburg. So if you kept that first bus stop, these disabled people don't need to do that, not in the rain and the wind, not in a wheelchair with a flapping raincoat. So if you remove that stop and you instead have the one further down Rua Street, that increases the steps to 552, I think it is, steps. And the one after that, the 4th stop, is only 200 steps. Hello. So I'm saying that if you have to take one, remove the one at the far end of Rua Street. It's currently dangerous anyway because the shop front, the veranda of a woman who's dead and won't remove the dangerous veranda, the buses actually can't come in close enough to make it safe for people. And the proposal suggests keeping that. So I'm suggesting that I'm against removing either. I also want to point out from your statistics that if you remove the one coming back, so people going into town for work, you move the one opposite on Rua Street going into town, there's an extra 1,000 people who need to use the bus stop before it. There isn't room in the bus shelter in the rain. Currently, there are 2 shelters, so that's really good.
Apologies, Cheryl, we have run out of time. If there's any final remarks that you would like to make, that would be fantastic.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I do believe that Waka Kotahi and Greater Wellington Regional Council and the City Council all want to improve accessibility. I'm just not seeing it in this proposal.
Thank you, Cheryl. Committee members will now take, we've got one more public participant, my apologies. Trish Davis is here to speak on TR 0226. Trish, you've got 5 minutes as well, and if you would like us to ask any questions, we'll need to do it in that time.
Kia ora koutou, Your Worship, councillors and officials. My name is Trish Davis and I live in Lyell Bay. I'm a neighbour to Cheryl, the previous speaker. I use the buses every day. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on my submission. So my submission is about the being opposed to the removal of the bus stops on Rua Street. I've spoken with my neighbours about this, and there are 11 submissions that are opposed to the removal of the Rua Street bus stops, and there are 4 that are in support. So on behalf of those 11 people, when I've spoken with my neighbours, many people are elderly or they are disabled. Walking the additional 5 minutes is something that is not easily achievable for them. They've said that in their submissions. It's not just walking, it's also carrying your groceries or your laundry for that further distance. Wellington has about 217 days a year when it's raining, and that happens a lot in Lyell Bay. Also, it's a very windy place, so you're asking people to have to walk down Lyell Parade. And when I do this in winter, often I have sunglasses on because I get sand in my eyes. Nobody wants the sand in their eyes from the beach at the moment because of what has happened. So assuming that people can walk the additional 5 minutes and it is easy for them is a little bit uncharitable in this situation. Also, I'm worried about people then not using the bus stops because that's their main way of experiencing Wellington and going about their business. And I worry about social isolation because I live on the corner. I see all the people coming past, and I often talk to them because they're my neighbours. So I worry about people not coming out of their houses to do their essential things like grocery shopping and then becoming isolated. Also, this proposal is about efficiency of the buses. I use the buses and we often stop in Kilburnie for a minute every day, or we stop if I'm on the number 36 in High Tai for about 45 seconds because we're actually ahead of the schedule. So in terms of the efficiency, the buses could go slower and, at certain times so that they still stay on schedule. But they're ahead of it, obviously, if they've got to wait. Just in terms of the consultation around this process, the flyers didn't go down all of Freiburg Street. I walked around with them just to make sure that people knew. The people in the Kāinga order houses did not know about this consultation process. So I'm aware my neighbours did say, yes, people were out from the council dropping things off, but I don't know how far that extended to, because when I did talk to people to say, did you know, because this is a big change for us, people said, oh, I didn't know anything about it. Also, some of them did not have access to the internet, and that's why you have written submissions, handwritten ones. So just in terms of other distance issues, Cheryl pointed out there are other bus stops that are actually closer together than the ones that are proposed to be removed in Rua Street to other places. we see that every day when we're on the buses. You think, oh, I've stopped again, and it's not that far. But we don't say remove those bus stops because they're inefficient for the bus. That's everything I want to say. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Trish. Did anyone have any questions? It appears there were none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee members will take 10 minutes for morning tea. I understand that Councillor Abdurrahman has been doing some working on an amendment for the next paper. So just if you could finalise the wording for that over the break and circulate it, that would be fantastic. Thank you. We'll see you back in 10 minutes. bearing with us just as we work through some of those changes. We'll now move into item 2.1, which is the consideration of the Newtown parking scheme. I was going to welcome Vida to introduce the paper, but she's already here alongside Paul Barker, so please introduce the paper.
Kia ora koutou, thank you. We will take the paper as read, but we do note that this paper is the result of some previous decisions from the Regulatory Processes Committee back in April last year, and is bringing back some of those resolutions for your consideration today.
Fantastic, and I understand there's an amendment coming, so if there's questions around that amendment, we can answer them then. Did anyone have any questions on the paper generally? Councillor Tiefenbacher.
Can you give us a quick rundown on how the residents of Newtown and Berempore feel about the current status that we have, so the changes we've made over time around it? Because I've made inquiries, but I've found it a little bit hard to get a clear picture of whether the local residents are actually happy with the Newtown and Berempore parking scheme as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, so at a high level, this scheme has been underway for probably 6 or 7 years and has been through a number of iterations. We introduced phase 1 in Newtown West and Berempore in early 24 or mid 24, and then 12 months later, the eastern side of Newtown was introduced, and we've seen throughout that differences of opinion, but generally it has hit the mark in terms of enabling space for residents to park, but also enough space for visitors, both short-term and longer as well. Currently we have about 30% of the spaces which are now restricted, P1 to 80s permit exempt, and the rest of that is still totally unrestricted in most places. Paul, was there anything you wanted to add, Paul?
Can you give us a quick rundown on how we have engaged with the public to find out how we know that people are for and against it? Have we gone out for consultation? Have we gone out for discussion with them to find out these things, please?
Yeah, I'll hand over to Paul for that. There's been multiple consultations.
Yeah, this is almost one of the most consulted on schemes we've had. No, but we have not. So we've done 2 reviews. We did the initial review as requested by the Regs Committee for Newtown West and Berempore, and that review consisted of on-street observations. We did quite an extensive survey using the camera-enabled vehicles to see who was parking where. We haven't done that with the second review, which is the one that's been attached to this report, Newtown East. Neither report asked questions of the users, so we haven't done that, and again, that was part of the scope of that review as set down by Regs. Anecdotally, we have heard back from the Residents Association, and I know Councillor Foon has reported back herself for what she's been hearing back through that association, that it is working well, and anecdotally there appears to be, and I've seen that in Newtown East, and we have surveyed in Newtown West and Berempore lots more empty spaces within those P180s. So that's the bit that enabled residents that belong to the scheme to be able to come and go throughout the day, which previously they weren't able to because those spaces were captured by commuters. And then visitors and guests can come and stay for up to 3 hours without having to try and walk some distance to where they're going, and of course they don't need to pay. It's not a payment scheme in Newtown.
Thank you.
Hopefully that covered that. It's a bit long-winded.
Sounds like it did. Councillor Abdurrahman.
It just says in the report that you exceeded from 544 to 586. My question is, what is the governance rule when officers can override a policy? Do you still, example, if the currently what we are approving is not enough, if it's exceeded, you can go over and by how many?
Cool. So the way the parking policy works, it guides us that we would allocate permits at 85% of the approved spaces, so the number of spaces on the street, and that allows for always 15% to be available for visitors and guests. It also allows for just a little bit of poor parking, if you like. So we had that. It's a guidance. Thinking about Newtown West, you actually approved 1,100 spaces. 1,138 spaces, but we only implemented half of those in our phase 1 restrictions. So at an officer level, the extra 42 applications we had, we could have either been hard on that and declined 42, the lowest priority 42 applicants, and held it at cap. Given that we had this extra 500 spaces up our sleeve, if you like, we felt that actually there was quite a minor amendment to actually allow those 42 to get a permit, given that we could add more spaces that had been pre-approved. So we did go over the cap. We took it up to 92% rather than the 85%, still well below the 100, and to be fair, we haven't seen any great concern that it's been oversubscribed.
I did ask this question through the writing questions, but I will do it again because the answer seems to be a bit I'm not understanding the answer right well here. What specific evidence do we have that it has delivered measurable mode shift or emission reduction outcomes? Just to make it clear, I do support our climate objectives. The report links the scheme to climate objectives, so I just want to know if we have any evidence that indicates that that is the case.
So I guess one of the key drivers of the parking policy originally back in 2020 was out of Te Takere and looking at trying to create equitable use of the street space and prioritise street space for moving vehicles, and then also with these parking management schemes in residential areas, enabling residents to park before commuters. And we were definitely seeing in Newtown prior to this scheme going in a lot of commuter parking happening in that area that without having data on it has been reduced, and we're not seeing the same pressures, especially around the hospital, that we were seeing prior.
I did ask how many tickets has been issued since the scheme was introduced. My understanding in the first year until February of 2025 was about 500 something or 600. Now from July 15, 24 to June 25, it says 174. Out of this 174, two streets, Cromandel Street and Norman Bay Street, got in total like 72 tickets. That is more than 30% of the total ticket that have been issued for the whole area in Newtown and Berhampur. I wonder what is going on right there.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I can comment. I also wonder what's going on there. That is something that we will be able to follow up with the camera car to see whether we're making a difference and who it is that's parking there. I haven't dived into that the enforcement data that was provided to actually understand who was being ticketed. Are they commuters that are parking in those streets on the P180, or are they residents? So we could delve into that data to try and find out.
And it may be that if today you do approve the additional car parks, that might be one of the things that can help resolve that issue if it is that there's too many residents or residents are not able to get parking permits and therefore parking in the residence area without having the correct permit. But that we'll have a look at that as we decide where and those new parks should be placed.
Yeah, you can definitely go back on the list. I may also observe that Coromandel is a much larger street, so it could perhaps also be due to the quantum of parks available and the number of people using it. Next up is Councillor Randall.
These restricted parks were partly put in place not just for the residents, supporting residents whose homes don't have any off-street car parking, but also for visitors. There's 15% supposedly free for visitors. How is the visitor utilisation going? Is 15% the correct amount? Because you sort of imply that you've issued more parks, so that means there's only 10% there, but are they still free and able to visit?
So I guess that 15% is for two lots of visitors. There's the lots, those that are staying for less than the 3 hours, the 180 minutes that we've got in Newtown, and for those that use one of the daily permits as well. So there's residents all receive 50 daily permits they're able to use throughout the year and they just activate that themselves. We are still seeing lots of empty spaces inside the P180 areas, and that's as I said, for Newtown East, we haven't done any camera car observations. It's purely been just anecdotal as we've driven through and looked at these suburbs and how they're working. It does appear to be working. Not getting concerns coming through strongly from the residents. So my advice at this stage is that 15% appears to be still working, but it is something we need to monitor. And as we roll these schemes out elsewhere, clearly Wadestown was the second area we've put one in, but we would be looking to bring back a scheme later this year to think about how we might refresh the coupon and resident zones in the city suburbs. How do we roll this type of scheme out into Mount Victoria, Kelburn, Thorndon?
Okay. The area along central Newtown where residents aren't permitted to have permits, so to speak, why are we now enabling them to get permits when this area has got a huge investment in both cycleways and bus improvements? And I thought the direction of the city was that people very close to these things were expected not to have cars.
So currently the parking policy does exactly what you're saying, that if you do live in one of these town centre areas, then you're not eligible for a parking permit for the residents' parking areas in the surrounding areas. However, the committee last year decided that they wanted to vary from the parking policy and instructed us to go away and consult on a traffic resolution that did allow the people that live, for example, in an apartment above a shop to get a residence permit for parking in the streets behind the area. We're not proposing to introduce residence parks in those town centre. They'll remain short-term parking for people visiting shops and visiting the area, but we, as instructed, have gone away and done this traffic resolution to allow people living in that area to park in the streets behind.
So proceeding with this, though, really is running against at least the spirit of the parking policy that was being agreed a couple of councils ago.
Yeah, so there's been a number of changes through these schemes. One has been that we consistently have been asked to remove the criteria that was if you had an EV that you got a higher ranking in getting a residence permit, and the other one, there was also some changes around motorcycle parking and how that sat in the street hierarchy. So those are things which at some point when a parking policy review happens, they may be things that you decide to then change the parking policy and update the parking policy to reflect the variation or deviations that have been made by committee.
Okay, thank you. Can I go back on the list?
Yep, Mayor Little.
Yes, thank you. Just in relation to the permit renewal process, I understand the idea is that residents will get a permit to allow them to park beyond the 180 minutes, but then the permit only lasts a year and then everybody has to apply again, and it's a lottery about whether people get it, which would make it an unattractive proposition to residents there who want some certainty about their ability to park near their residence. Can I understand the rationale behind that policy? And then secondly, has the council done any work on assessing kind of turnover of residents in the particular area, understanding that there's a high degree of rental properties in that particular area?
I think I will hand over to Paul for that one, who is much deeper in the parking policy technicalities than I am.
Look, and in one of the attachments to the paper, which is the review document, there is the table that lists that priority grouping, and it was the priority grouping was the safeguard, I guess, for how residents could guarantee a permit. Some of the lower groupings, the lowest is for the first permit for buildings after 2020. So if you moved into a building that was built after 2020 that did not have off-street car parking, you were one of the very lowest groups that got a priority. But if you moved into an existing home, a pre-1920s home that did or didn't have off-street parking, there's a lot higher chance of getting a permit. So that's that guarantee that perhaps they were looking for. It depends on the type of property they're moving to, and the parking policy talks about that. What we didn't want to see was that new builds that didn't provide parking parking, we were guaranteeing an ability to access the curb space. The safeguard is around meeting that demand, and we can assess the demand on those properties, the pre-2020 properties that would have a demand on this space, and that's the assessment we made initially on how many spaces we ought to roll out in Newtown, Perranporth, and Newtown East and West. My first assessment of that Newtown East area, I suggested that we could restrict something like 1,140 spaces. Now, when we brought that back following consultation, it was felt that was perhaps too much initially, so we split into stages, stage 1 and stage 2. We've rolled out stage 1 last year. We're now asking to roll out the second phase. That's the safeguard, I guess. So if we were to put more spaces in, that would provide that certainty for the residents. So it's not necessarily about the priority list, it's about how many spaces we restrict. The more restrictions we put out, the better that safeguard be. And so here in this paper, we're asking to increase that by 220. My feeling is that something like 110, and I've alluded this in the paper, would probably suffice for now, and we wouldn't have anybody fail the scheme. So everybody at 110 today, fingers crossed, would get a permit without us hitting cap, but we'll be very close to cap. So building a bit of a safe board in there for another 110, so go to the 220, would enable us to have sufficient capacity within the scheme for the next 2 to 3, perhaps 5 years. But as we see new developments go in, that's going to put pressure on the streets. Potentially that pressure is going to encourage more residents to have to join the scheme. And potentially those ones that move into a new build would also try to apply, but they'll be the first to miss out. So hopefully this answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I guess what I'm struggling with is council issues concerns for new properties. Council controls whether or not there's off-street parking with new builds. But on here we're not going after the builders of the property. We're going after the tenants, and they are suffering because of decisions of other people, which doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, I guess so. When we updated the district plan, we were not able to put in any parking requirements, so they were all removed then for those new builds. So we, as council, don't have control over that. That's correct, Liam? Limping.
Yeah, Your Worship, I think I see where you're coming from in that regard, but we've got to recall and remember that the central government removed any requirements for parking for private development, and as a result that's been filtering through into our policy settings, and that's why in this instance it was a departure from the policy by allowing those mixed use and commercial centre residents to access the scheme.
So it underscores my point about therefore we shouldn't be punishing tenants by creating uncertainty about their ability to get a permit to park in the street.
We also have a question from Councillor Calvert.
Might be more than one. You referenced the camera operated or the camera cars. Why are they all of them? Are they all fully operational now?
I will defer that question to Kevin.
Morning, Councillor. Yes, all 4 cars are currently operational. So 3 are being used fully for enforcement, and 1 will be used for occupancy. So basically, going across the city to determine how full our car parks are. There's a program of occupancy checks that are in the process of being planned and will be rolled out in the coming months.
So you're not, because you referenced that it's just visible sightings. You're not using the camera car now. So why wasn't the camera car used to do the assessment prior to giving us feedback on the scheme?
I suspect at the time the camera cars were not available.
But we've had them for 2 years?
We've been in the process of getting them fully operational, which they are, but they, as far as I'm aware, they were not used.
When were they operational from? Fully operational from?
They've been fully operational from a good chunk of last calendar year and this one so far.
Right. So why haven't we used them to feed back into how the scheme's working.
Yeah, it's quite a different way in which we use the camera cars. So we did use them when we did Newtown West and Berrinport, and it's quite an extensive piece of work and very significant number of man hours involved at officer
Person hours.
Person hours, officer hours to analyse the data. And it is able to be done again. Through here, we were looking at the time to get this report back in the review, particularly ahead of the renewal cycle. So given the pressures on the parking services team to start doing occupancy elsewhere, we opted not to do on-street reviews.
Okay, look, I'll go back on the list, thank you.
And Councillor Calvert, I understand you're interested in the use of the cars, but if we could just stick to the policy that we're deciding on today.
But that's the sort of stuff that helps feed in and gives us the evidence so we can make evidence-based decisions. And if we don't have we put money into cars, and if we don't use them for this sort of thing,
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. You're welcome to raise that in debate. Next, we have another question from Councillor Abdul Rahman.
There was a resolution that we passed because it's related to the review that we're making today. The resolution was to address equity issues, and I just wonder how many of the ticket that you approved has been that resolution been implemented as part of the tickets that you issued. Example, for accessibilities, have they got any half price according to that resolution? If not, why not? For community card holders, I don't understand. We need to wait for central government legislation. But for accessibility, I wonder what it looks like.
Kevin, are you able to update on that?
It's certainly not information we gathered as part of preparing for this report. Kevin might be able to get it off the top of his head, but it certainly is not
I don't think he can by the looks of it. So I suggest we'll take that offline and come back to you with an email.
Thank you.
The second question is, my worry by approving the 220 in the Newtown East is that by creating more restriction, we might creating more demand for the community. Am I thinking by saying that? Am I thinking right by saying that, or that was not the rationale behind this move? Because if we stick to the 110, you also have that 85%. You can still feel it. I wonder why we're going with the 220 instead of 110.
There's a couple of reasons that we're proposing, or our suggested approach is the 220. As you know, we've got within the TR that was approved in 2024, there is an additional 500 spaces which can be allocated. This stage 2, we are suggesting the 220, so we allow for the approximately 100 which missed out in this last round. So that enables us to ensure that those people will be able to get a residence permit, but also acknowledging that at the same time we're allowing the residents in the shopping areas or the town centre zones to get permits, that we are trying to put an extra amount on there to ensure that buffer of that they'll also be able to get spaces, and then also for any growth which happens in the next couple of years, we think 220 is approximately the right amount.
So I can just comment there on the table under paragraph 59 of the report. Sort of shows that in that Newtown East zone, there's 2,100 total spaces available for residents to park in, restricted and unrestricted. So if we increase from 860 by another 220, we're still leaving just under 2,000 spaces unrestricted. No, it's not. It would be 1,000. Sorry, 1,000, just under 1,000 unrestricted spaces. So it's still less than half of the spaces. So residents aren't compelled to get a permit, and that will be about a careful design of the street. And I used an example, if a street currently has 20 spaces and we have 5 of them restricted, there's a pretty good chance that you could not have to get a permit and you've got 15 available. If we were to then move to restricting 15 of the 20 spaces, more of those residents in that street might feel compelled to have to get a permit. Your point exactly. So we'll have to be a little bit careful about just observing how many people requested a permit from that street and make sure that we're not over delivering against the demand at the street level. And I know one of your questions in the Q&A was how will we decide that? And effectively we're going to go back to look at where the demand is, where the people are asking for permits, and make sure that they are looked after rather than just arbitrarily just lifting the entire suburb up by a percentage. So we'll target where we do it. Otherwise we're going to get unfair consequences. Very much acknowledging your concerns.
Thanks for that, Paul. Next up is Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. In terms of the 220 car parks we're recommending to be converted, they're currently unrestricted car parks. Do we know who is currently using those car parks?
We don't. We can assume that close into the hospital and close to Ridderford Street that they'll be commuters. A mixture of commuters and residents, and then further out, it's likely to be residents, particularly potentially residents of multi-unit dwellings that don't have sufficient off-street car parking, so they spill into the street, and then they take up the spaces of those that were a pre-1920s home that doesn't have off-street parking. So the policy tries to differentiate between those two users, and we want to therefore prioritise those that were there first.
Yeah. So really, what's happening is that this intention is to put greater priority to the local residents for access to the car parks, and 200 commuters, if it goes ahead, well, not 200 commuters, but even assuming half of the car parks used by commuters, another 200 local workers will not have a car park.
Again, from observations, and to Councillor Calvert's point, we haven't surveyed, but we are seeing more demand placed on those unrestricted parks south of Constable Street. So clearly we've done a mixture, I think, of some commuters no longer coming by car, potentially coming by other modes, or being pushed further out. So we have dispersed, and I recall sharing plans of how far that walking distance was out, and we are seeing that. People are parking further away from where they would like to be because that's the nearest empty spot they can find. So we will displace some, or we might remove some.
But we are also seeing much better space available for visitors, for example, to the hospital because of the P180 restrictions. So we've anecdotally seen that there are more people able to use those spaces that are visiting the hospital rather than working in it.
Yeah. I might just suggest that we move on because we do also have an amendment for this paper. We have a couple more people who want to ask questions, and a lot of the content that we're going over is, I believe, well covered in the paper already.
I have one more question.
If your question is not covered in the paper, you may ask it, and then we'll need to draw it to a close so that we can move on.
So just to be clear in the future, if this is passed, there's going to be another traffic resolution to come back and identify exactly where the restricted parks are going to go and that sort of stuff?
No, the original traffic resolution allowed us to go up to an additional 500, but there's an 18-month restriction on that. So within 18 months of us implementing the scheme, which was May, June last year, we can introduce up to the total cap of places. So no additional traffic resolution would be required. We would then go in and implement those spaces based on looking at where the pressures are.
So further to that, because I can see your eyebrows went up. So we have.
I feel that was quite well covered. I mean.
Well, so we have 500 approved. Our difficulty is now we've got to find which 220 of the 500 we do, and we will do that based on that analysis I've given you to undertake.
So the actual local residents of the streets where you decide to put more of these restricted parks and other people will not have any opportunity to comment.
They have had their opportunity, and they submitted to the original traffic resolution. So we have heard that.
And the committee did resolve to limit the time on that, so that such that any further amendment that was going to be made, people would be aware of the fact that it was changing after the 18 months it was originally approved. Councillor Tiefenbacher.
Yeah, just two very, very quick ones. So is it only one permit per house?
No, it's a maximum of 2 per house.
Okay.
And again, is that the priority system, and we give everybody one and then we go back and give them their second.
Right. Okay, and also when we're doing such a major change to the way we actually manage parking around an area, do you think it's appropriate that we don't do a follow-up one-on-one with the people in the area just to find out how it's effective, especially if we're going to roll it out over different suburbs?
I guess we have done a lot of review with this one. We've done the cars, and we have also, of course, worked with the residents' associations and things like that. And the general response we're receiving is that it has helped. But no, we do not go out and do in second consultation to ask has it worked well or not currently. That's not within the scope of our project and the resource that we've got available.
Thanks. Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, I just wondered whether actually, because this is not just a TR, it's actually a report back on the scheme, should this not have gone to the city strategy committee? Because it's really about reviewing how policy is being implemented. And I think it's out of scope of this committee to do that.
I think that's really a question for the chairs group, but I'm not sure if the particular resolution that brought this specifically recommended the regs committee. I'm getting nodding that it was specifically directed back to the regs committee.
I'm just really wondering whether actually the regs committee has actually got the powers to sort of take on board a report back, because this is obviously feeding into our parking policy, because that's been referenced, but there's no reference to really residents as such, in terms of
again,
that.
I can take that answering as the chair. I do believe that this is appropriate for the regs committee to consider. It's a minor alteration to the work that was already underway. It was originally considered by the regs committee with the idea for it to be reported back to the regs committee, and as has been highlighted through the work in the triennium plan, there is a review of the parking policy that will be going to Councillor Abdurrahman's committee, so further broader review can be considered there.
Okay.
That brings us to the end of questions. Thank you very much, officers. We do have an amendment, so I may ask you to come back to the table for that. But in the meantime, I am very happy to move this paper. I think it has been good to see, given we did make such a significant change to the way that we were going to address the oversubscription of parking in residential areas, particularly in suburban areas, that we have been making a few iterative changes in the process. As I mentioned very briefly before, we do have a broader review of the parking policy that will look at overall how this is working. But I think at this time, this is an appropriate change to make sure that we are at least extending out that pain time so that it's not being experienced right now and will be experienced once we can more fulsomely review the entire parking policy. And it'll ensure that people can either choose to use the restricted parking spaces and take advantage of the different tiers of eligibility or continue under the status quo. There's no requirement to use the current policy. Members can continue to use the status quo of unrestricted spaces. So I'm very happy to move this paper. Councillor Matthews was happy to second.
Yeah, I'll reserve my right to speak.
Fantastic. And that brings us to the amendment. I believe Councillor Randall was going to move an amendment to the paper.
Sophie, have you circulated the last amendment? Yeah, there you go.
Yes. I would like to move this amendment. There's a number of things that are happening in Newtown, and I thank officers for coming back and trying to address them. But there's also, I'd like to move in support of Councillor Abdurrahman, the concerns to make sure that the way that the permit system is working is improved, and instruct officers to report back on these other issues which have come up during the whole debate and feedback from the public around this parking management. So thank you.
Fantastic. And I'll just check before it does get seconded whether anyone had any particular questions about this amendment for officers before I bring them back to the table. Seems there are none. Fantastic. And you had a seconder, Councillor Randolph or Councillor Abdurrahman? Councillor Rewati, do you wish to speak now or reserve?
Reserve my right, thank you.
Fantastic. And I did promise Councillor Abdurrahman that he could be at the top of the speaking list if he would like. Would you like to speak now?
A little bit, though I know you want to finish the meeting by 11:30. I don't know if that is working. Look, the parking scheme was approved last year, and at the time I had we had a big discussion. I was a really big time in opposition, a lot of that because of, the workers who come, the nurses who park their car. However, 1 year on, the community seems to be moving along now. They are happy with the parking. That doesn't mean there is no issue still, because when you look at it, Coromandel Street, 46 ticket, and only in few months, as you have seen in the report, in the question and answer report. So there are issues that need to be addressed in going forward, and increasing the number might, to some extent, solve that. The renewal seems to be a bit making life easy for us and the officers instead of making life easy for our residents. So some other countries, if you look in Sydney, if I'm not mistaken, and some European countries, what you do is they send you a renewal email where you just click it and you just go through, you pay the payment, and then that's it. And for us, you have to go, if you are someone who's not good at digital, you have to come to council office or you have to go to community places, and that is not going to be the best way for our community. I just really think this is a very simple amendment, which I think will make life a bit easier for our community, and I'm hoping support from all of you, and I'll leave it there.
Is there any other debate? I'm happy to briefly say, I also thank Councillor Abdurrahman for working on this, and in discussion with officers, they said that they would be able to work this in with the review of the parking policy that we had looked at within the Triennium Plan. I do have some hesitancy around the, automatic right of renewal process and how that would affect the ability to have different groupings of priorities, because people who may be the lowest priority would automatically get a new permit in contention with someone who may be the highest priority. But I look forward to some of that advice coming back in that parking review. Would anyone would you like an opportunity to speak, Councillor Rewati? You're all good. And right of reply, Councillor Randall? Fantastic. I now put the motion that has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, press 1, and those against, press 2.
Can we have a division, please?
We sure can. Unanimous. We'll now move back to the substantive with the amendment included. Is there any debate? Councillor Tiefenbacher.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit concerned that we don't go back to the community on a much more aggressive manner when we're making massive changes like this. This is quite a significant change. If you think about it, people who can't actually afford too much extra cash actually have to buy a permit to get the right to get an advantage of parking on the street, which is already a change. I don't feel 100% comfortable that as a council we're representing our constituents appropriately if we make massive changes that are different and do not get absolute feedback. We spend a lot of time consulting beforehand, but sometimes that's hard for people to actually understand what's going to hit them and what the impact's going to be after it's been implemented. Then people know what the impact is and so forth. So I'm really conflicted, because I probably will vote for it because it seems as though most people feel as though this is a good way to go. But having said that, I just think we're working with limited information.
Thank you. Councillor Phone.
Kia ora, given this is a new town and we don't have a representative for our Pakawakawa Southern Ward on regs, so thank you for letting me speak, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Abdurrahman, for your work and getting in touch with the community about this. So my key points were that I just wanted to say that in general, the feedback that I have heard consistently as a big problem for Newtown, this scheme against the highest odds and all resistance from all communities is working, and people have reluctantly said so, reluctantly agreed that it is, but at our Newtown Residents Association in particular. The areas that I have been having negative feedback on, which are providing the people living in the town centre zones access to the permit, and people being refused the permit because of over conscription, are being resolved through this paper. So the only other thing that has been outstanding is the Roy Street neighbourhood, which is by the zoo. They have a different set of challenges because for them it's the weekend that's busy with zoo visitors and people using Newtown Park. Both Officer Barker and myself have been reaching out to the Roy Street community, giving them a lot of time, but they have not come forward again on request with solutions at this stage. So we were ready to have an amendment to help them, but they haven't come back. So I'm happy to thank officers for their incredibly detailed work in this area. And I know that, Paul, you spent over an hour and a bit with the residents of the Roy Street area. So we really have gone out to many, not all, but really work with the community on this. So yeah, I do commend this work and ask for your support for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foon. Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Rogers. Look, I've had a look at this quite carefully. I know that there's huge parking conflict in this area. I speak as a representative from part of the city that's not near this near Newtown. Look, this consultation has been focused on addressing the needs of the local residents in an area that has the best public transport and has had millions invested in a brand new cycleway to extend more parking to local residents who have access to these great services. And I'm very concerned because this consultation has not even made a nominal attempt to look at the users of the unrestricted car parks which will be lost during this. A lot of those are going to be local workers. They're going to be workers from people such as the Northern Ward, which cannot get to work unless they drive, because public transport is simply too bad and it's definitely too far to cycle. I'm concerned we have had no feedback or consultation about these impact workers from this consultation, yet people are going to lose out. They're already being pushed further and further south. As been noted by officers, people who want to work at the hospital or at the hospice or all these other businesses who come from outside that area are being having their access reduced further from what it was before. And I don't think that this consultation took any of that into account, because the parking policy literally states that these people have the lowest priority of all, the lowest of the low, to use our streets to park to go to work. I'm also concerned there's going to be no further consultation. People who are going to be directly impacted by the loss of car parks, because streets that are currently unrestricted and does provide some access are going to be unilaterally changed, and the people locally will have no say whatsoever. Officers are going to come down and it's just do it. And for 200 car parks, which is massive. And we've had a debate earlier about one mobility car park. We've had a debate this morning about preserving 2 car parks on Dawson Street, and we've come to a good local resolution based on the feedback of the local residents. And yet we're not going to do this for 200 car parks. I think that's wrong. And I also think that this this really goes back to reflect on the parking policy. I'm really glad we're going to relook at this, because I think the parking policy that was enabled by previous councillors is not serving the interests of all residents of the city. And so I really ask you all to oppose this.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. I haven't seen any further hands. Is there any further? Councillor Cartwell.
Yeah, look, I just want to thank you, Councillor Randall. I just want to endorse your thoughts. I mean, this is a plan to increase the the restricted parking by approximately a third, so 200. So it is a lot, or maybe 40%. I can't do the numbers, but look, it is a lot all of a sudden. And look, I really would like greater clarity about the performance of the current scheme. It's really important. This was the first scheme put in. We need to spend the effort up front to really understand, because if we want to roll this thing out around the rest of the city, we need to put extra resources into seeing how this is working, and also working in line with our policies. I've heard policies being talked about, a parking policy, a climate change policy, our urban form, and yet we're making these changes for residents, but there's no policy in respect of the residents, the businesses of our city, and what we're doing to support them to live, work and play here. So I'm happy to continue to support number 5, because I believe we need to do that piece of work, but I'm not supporting the rest of the amendments, or sorry, the recommendations, and I ask for division when we come to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to have my right of reply. I do think it was quite well covered that the status quo prior to the implementation of this scheme was unrestricted parking spaces. And the change that is being proposed by officers, I do believe to be quite minor, in the consideration of the fact that when we went out with the traffic resolution in the first instance, it was to the full extent of 1,100 spaces. We are nowhere near utilising the 1,100 spaces. So in terms of people have not been consulted about the fact that they're going to lose an additional 200 car parks, I would argue what they have not been consulted about is the fact that they have managed to retain an additional 400. The actual fact is that regardless of the policy impact, there are more people who want to park in these spaces than we have parking available. And the intent of this policy is to try and apply a lens that enables different groupings of people who need to access parking spaces to do so in a way that is more predictable than an entirely unrestricted parking space, which is purely first come, first serve, and in particular for people who are commuting, is primarily already filled by people who leave their cars at home in Newtown on the street. So when they come and try and find a space, they cannot find one. Instead, what they find with the restricted parking spaces that are, as described, not fully occupied, is that parking spaces are available. They are available for visitors for a period of 180 minutes so that they can visit nearby local amenity without having to fight over those unrestricted parking spaces. Additionally, I think there has been a lot of work that went into talking specifically about people who worked at the hospital and visited the hospital. I know both members of the committee in the previous triennium and officers met with hospital workers and people who were visiting the hospice, and we even made specific changes in the parking policy to allow for more space for parking at the hospice. So I think there has been a lot of work that has gone into this. I think it is important that we recognise the status quo is unrestricted parking spaces, which are purely on a first come, first serve basis, and therefore having a policy over the top of that that does actually look at, whether you agree with it or not, the requirements of different groups of people to have spaces for parking, prioritising people like mobility permit holders and people who inherited a dwelling which they could never retrofit parking onto, I think is a good step. So I would encourage you to support all of these recommendations to enable both short-term and long-term visitors to have more equitable access to parking that is physically limited by finite space. For those in favour, press, does anyone need to take them separately? We'll take 1 to 4 first, and then we can take 5 second.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank
and
you.
a division on all of them. So for items 1 to 4, those in favour press 1, and those against press 2.
Could I have a division?
You sure can.
I asked for one before. Yeah.
We've had it 3 times. Fantastic. The next, I declare that carried. The final item, number 5. Those in favour press 1, and those against press 2. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to item 2.2, which are our March traffic resolutions. Please welcome Ross Balfour to introduce the paper. I'll also note at this time, just before Ross introduces it, that the amended substantive in front of you, as I circulated via email, has 2 traffic resolutions crossed out. Those are the Sacred Heart Cathedral School, and there was also a further one down below. Those both relate to the installation of temporary speed management signs, and in discussion with the officers, the Deputy Chair and the Residents Association, we have decided to do more work on those, and they'll come back to the following meeting. Over to you, Ross.
Kia ora koutou, bringing the traffic resolutions March paper to your attention. Appreciate the public consultation participation, and particularly the those that presented earlier today. Taken as read and here for any questions.
Are there any questions about the traffic resolutions? Councillor Tiefenbacher. You just need to make sure your mic's on.
2 seconds if you could, just so I can find it.
Of course, Mayor Little has a question in the meantime.
Yeah, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Look, in relation to, we had a submission this morning from the Tawa resident about, Tawa business community, just about the proposed mobility park there, and the suggestion that the current design is not adequate. Can that be, interested to hear officers' response to that submission, and whether that concern can be accommodated by a relocation of the proposed park?
So we've looked and had a bit of a further discussion about it, and so we've proposed retaining the existing proposal with the 2 spaces and time restriction. We'll look to do some curb adjustment at that location, and while that's been done, look to work with the bid team to for additional locations for further parking consideration.
Councillor Tiefenbacher, are you ready to go?
Yeah, please. So just in regard to the Dawson Street resolution, I note that we've got a response to one of the responders who said that, basically the change of street movements around Luxford Street, the inability to turn right from Luxford Street into Rentol was one of the reasons why there's such a large amount of traffic going up and down Dawson Street, causing some issues in the process. Our response was that at 1,188 vehicles, it was low traffic. Can you just qualify for me what actually constitutes a low traffic area?
When we break down 1,100 vehicles per day, you divide by 24 hours, it sort of comes down to, if I do my maths first.
I'm just curious, what number, at what point does a street go from low traffic to medium traffic?
The capacity of a street is about 1,200 per hour. So yeah, that's very low.
So very low. So okay, so if a street had 2,000 cars on it, you'd still consider it to be, on a day, on a 24-hour period, you'd say that's still a low traffic area?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, and how many of the issues do you think around that corner are created by the fact that so many cars are diverted up there rather than being out? Because you can no longer turn right in Luxford Street, so if you're coming from Island Bay, the natural way to get to most of Berrenport becomes through Dawson Street. Do we feel as though there is any, that our actual street changes in the past have actually caused some of the issues that we've got there now?
I would say any changes to a piece of road would divert traffic, because there's potential for increased congestion. So drivers would choose the easiest route. So yeah.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, just in relation to the Lyle Bay bus stops resolution. So my understanding is this is a request from Greater Wellington. Did they just send those through independently? Has there been sort of any other look at any of the other bus stops along similar areas? We heard from the presentation this morning that there may be other areas that also have bus stops quite close together.
Thankfully, we have Greater Wellington in the room, so I'll defer the question to them.
Hello councillors, my name is Leona Eshevich. I am an asset planning engineer in the bus assets team at Mearlink Greater Wellington. The way that we were made aware of the situation in Rua Street, we've been aware of it for several years. It's been on our radar. Previous councillors have raised questions as to why there's 2 pairs of bus stops so close together. It's about 100, 140 metres apart. It's also well known within all of Wellington that we've got lots of bus stop piers very close together, about 100 metres, 150 metres on average. That's just how it's been for decades. The reason that we've highlighted this one in particular is that it's purely been raised to us directly, so we're responding in good faith to investigate through consultation whether it's needed in the community, what the reasons are, and hear specifically from the community whether they value the current position of the bus stops, that would be the decider.
So just in terms of one of the main reason is that to get efficiency gains with the bus service, is there any way of quantifying what those gains would be with the removal of bus stop?
With the removal of just one bus stop here, the gain would be very minimal. You wouldn't be able to quantify that much with just a removal of one stop here. If we were saying the removal of maybe 10 stop pairs, you would see some sort of a significant increase in bus journey times. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how much that would be. That would require some further analysis, but the increase in speed in bus journey times would be minimal with just the removal of one stop here.
And just to clarify that the kind of driver of this is those efficiency gains, not the, is also listed in there that there's to improve the on-street parking availability has also been listed as a reason. Are those kind of at similar levels, or is it mainly the driver being the efficiency?
The main driver is to improve bus journey times, definitely. That's what me and my team are looking to do within Wellington City, albeit it's very difficult to achieve that. The indirect benefit to the community would be an increase in parking spaces. That was part of the request from a member of the community as a reason to look at removing this bus stop here to return parking to the community. That is just one voice out of thousands impacted, so that's important to remember. Again, we, as per NZTA public transport guidelines, the recommended distance between bus stop pairs is about 300 to 400 metres, and this is about 100, 140 metres apart between these two pairs. So on that principle, we would look to eliminate one bus stop pair, but again, it is down to the usage and the value of the stops in their current position to the community.
We had a question from Councillor Abdurrahman.
My first question would be, how much will it cost, the 12 traffic resolution here? How much is the total cost of it? Do we have anything?
For all this traffic resolution, I'll be guessing is about 10,000 to do the markings and signs.
Can I look to report back on that after this?
Cool. My second question is regards to Dawson Street. Because we have heard from Elizabeth and the other gentlemen that they haven't been consulted, they haven't received any letter. My question is, how much is it, is it normal procedure not to consult nearby houses when you make parking changes that include removal of car park or yellow lights?
Based on the information I have, is a resident that gave verbal feedback had actually been given a letter, and this is within the drop zone that we have that's shown on the presentation.
Just to clarify, is this traffic resolution under you or is under different department?
This resolution followed the process under our team, but it actually comes out from a project of the Cycleway, which is falls in Vida's team.
So who does the consultation? Is that your team or the cycle?
The Cycleway team.
So isn't, I think that the question should be directed to the cycle team then. Just to repeat the question, is it a normal procedure not to consult the nearby houses when you make parking change that includes removal of car parks?
So my understanding with this this TR, we use the standard 50-metre radius area to go out and do that consultation. And to Soon's point, those houses were included.
Okay. Fantastic. Next up, we have Councillor Randall.
Yes, just want to pick up. So with TR26 of the bus stops, one of the submitters noted that the officer's report says that there was an improvement in accessibility. In what way is removing bus stops making people walk further an improvement of inaccessibility? I mean, it may improve safety, may improve travel time, but surely it's not an improvement in accessibility.
I think the focus was on the efficient bus journey time, more consistent bus timing, efficiency gain, rather than the accessibility.
Yeah, I just think the wins and losses need to be maybe more accurately connected into the traffic resolutions, that's all. Secondly, there's discussions with respect to Dawson Street around whether just a 6-metre yellow line providing setbacks to make that whole intersection safer and enable the implementation of a stop sign properly. Are officers comfortable that that would be, even though it's lesser than was proposed, that that is still a safety improvement that they would be comfortable with?
It would be the minimum achievement. I think the original proposal allowed a bit further to make sure cars weren't sitting across the centre line on Dawson Street, but the 6-metre will achieve.
Okay. And thirdly, with respect to the TR0126 Tawa mobility, there was a comment about the lack of a drop curb for the second proposed mobility stop. But would officers consider implementing an extension of the drop curb so that the mobility access would mean, as was pointed out by the submitter, would be improved?
Assuming the progression of the TR, yes, we'll look to extend the drop curb.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Tiefenbacher.
Insofar as the Rural Street bus stops, how close to the end point or the beginning point of the buses that go there is that bus stop? Where they start, where they finish?
Defer
on the closest point.
Fiona?
Hello, I believe that detail should be in the TR. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I just want to know, because I think that starts and turns just around the corner, not very far around the corner. So in other words, it's right at the beginning of the journey or it's right at the end of the journey. So the people,
sorry,
so in other words, those time efficiencies are actually very limited, because when you're going home, there's only like probably 5 people left on the bus anyway, right?
This is in the suburbs. It's not central city where, like in the Golden Mile, you would definitely see significant savings. This is, in the suburbs.
So can I ask, why is Greater Wellington suggesting removing these bus stops, since the savings are so small and time-wise, from a fact that obviously we all want more people to use buses, and obviously taking away a bus stop, if there's very little in the way of time frame change savings, it just seems a bit strange you guys bringing this to us, that's all.
I think, Councillor, if I could, that was already asked and answered, in the sense that they recommended they were engaging in good faith, as residents had come to them and explicitly said that they were wanting the removal of this bus stop, and as such they had recommended it forward to us.
So do we do that with every recommendation?
I would hope that, every time there is a discussion about a bus stop, it's involving the people who manage the bus stops. Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Abdurrahman.
This is a bit of a process question. Who is advising on the TR 0326, which is the Dawson Street? If it's not you who did the consultation, who is advising on the TR? Who's advising us? The site.
So both Ross and my teams, we work very closely together on all of the work that we do. So every single project that we do across our business units, we work together. We've got different roles within that. Within my team, if they're within my work program, I've got the project manager and a design lead, as we call them, so people that are working through the design process. Ross's team provides the, what do we call it?
Legal description.
The legal description, but the delivery lead, sorry, that was the word I was looking for, that is sort of the technical input into that project. And so with traffic resolutions, it really depends on what the genesis was for which team it is led out of. This was seen as a minor traffic resolution. It was the safety issue arose, and we decided to mitigate it, and this was then led out of Soon's team in terms of doing the traffic resolution process. We went through when we did the cycleway and looked at this, and then some of those adaptations, this has resulted in this traffic resolution which has now come. So there's sort of no which team or what, where we work together across these projects.
That brings us to the end of questions. Thank you very much, officers. We do also have an amendment, so may I ask you back to the table for questions then if there are any. I'm very happy to move this amended substantive with the 2 traffic resolutions, as earlier mentioned, crossed out with the anticipation of them coming back to the committee next month. If you really want to learn about that, you can ask the officers more, but it goes towards wind loading of signs and all sorts of things about how big of a hole you have to dig. In terms of all of the other resolutions, I think having heard the public participants, which I would like to thank for coming in, and all of those who also made in writing as well, on balance, I do believe that the remaining should go ahead. I think there is further discussions that can be had around additional locations for mobility parking in Tawa, and the officers have already said that they are quite willing to go away and identify additional spaces to suit those needs. The removal of bus stops is always quite a contentious one amongst community members, balancing the needs of people who are using the service that travels past those stops and the people who use those stops actively. And I do think there is also a balance to be weighed up between the Wellington City Council as the person who provides the stops, and Greater Wellington as the authority that decides where the bus stops. And so we have heard in the past, I don't know if it's still the policy from elected members there, but we can keep a bus stop in and they just won't stop at it. So there is kind of a balance to be had around those decisions, and I think it is good to see that our team are working back and forth over where the location of those bus stops are. So I'm quite happy to put the motion. Is anyone willing to second it? Councillor Matthews, fantastic. We can now bring up the amendment that was raised earlier, which I believe is being moved by Councillor Randall. You'd like to speak now? Fantastic.
So this is an amendment to change the Dawson Street and reduce the extent of extending the safety measures. This is a very problematic intersection, and we've got very highly conflicted stakeholders involved. I absolutely accept that it's not safe enough, and I think the officers have done some good work to make it safer. But sometimes I think when they do this, they put their safety blinkers on and go maybe much further than they need to in terms of making it safer at the compromising of other uses of the road. And so I thank submitters who come in and made the point that it's maybe gone too far. I certainly also thank the officers who, as you saw, do support this amendment as making it safer. And I think we should approach it in a staged way. The current yellow lines do not meet the minimum guidelines from NZTA right now. The minimum guidelines are 6 metres setback. that enables a vehicle to get into that lane, and so therefore we should be able to transact that intersection in a much safer way than is currently now, and hopefully avoid the conflict that's been pointed out by officers, so we don't have accidents and people knocked over. That's always terrible. I also think, though, it listens to the feedback of the local residents, which is always important with these things, and so we're making it safer without necessarily overly losing road space. I think the addition of the stop sign is the key thing too. Having it as an uncontrolled intersection when there's obviously a safety conflict, more markings makes everyone know more about what the rules are, and so I urge you to support this, and which is as an improvement that will address the safety issue and still mitigate the loss of parking that's been reported.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. I have already had an indication for a question, so if we could just invite the team back to answer some questions. The first one from Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, and I just want to ask officers if this amendment represents an adequate addressing of the safety concerns, in your view.
As a minimum, yes. It'll be the absolute minimum to allow stacking and movement on Dawson Street.
I guess I'm kind of, you've said as a minimum. I guess I come back to my question, does it adequately address the safety concerns?
Based on what we know in terms of the intersection performance, yes, it will.
Yeah, because I guess my understanding about the treatment that was originally being applied for the extended broken yellow lines on the northern side of Dawson Street was to allow a vehicle to stack as it entered the intersection while one was also entering on the southbound side. So I guess does the 6 metres from the proposed stop control marking, being the stop line itself, does 6 metres from that period provide enough space for a car to stack while a car is exiting and then also navigate the narrower point further up the road?
The 6 metres will allow the stacking in both lanes. It'll just be if there's secondary cars further down that'll then sit on the centre line.
Cool, thank you. Is there any further questions of officers? See none. Thank you very much. Did you have a... Randall?
I understand
Councillor
O'Brien was going to second.
There's a bit of a fight over the seconder. It looks like Councillor O'Brien.
No, mate, you go for it.
The Mayor is happy to second since there was a lot of fighting. Do you wish to speak now?
And look, I support the changes, and having heard their submissions this morning too, hear what they're saying. That is a very tightly constrained area for car parking. On the other hand, it is a pretty, it's a narrow street going into a major flow of traffic. So I think these are sensible changes to make, including the 6 metre limit on the broken yellow line, which will achieve the safety concerns, safety objectives that I think are sought in this change.
Anyone else wish to debate? Councillor Abdurrahman.
I just want to say thank you to the residents who reach out, and including with the proposal of what to be done. I think when we work with our local communities and we can address their concerns, especially thanks to Elizabeth, who've been very consistent in advocating for what she believes and for what the community around her she represents. So in this case, just to bring a bit of context to it, why it's very important for some of the people who live on Adelaide Road, and we need to in the future, I think, keep in consideration when we consult, because example, Elizabeth, I'm not sure if it's just like 50 meters from where we're making the change, but she has been impacted last year when we removed car park from Adelaide Road for the common goal of everyone, which is for the cycle lane. And she moved it to Dawson Street, and she's a mother of 2 kids, and she thought, okay, this is her safe space now, at least she can find somewhere to park, even if she has to walk 100 meters or 200. And now you're coming back and we're removing this, at least not giving her an opportunity to have a say. And I think that is not right. And that is why I also think when we do the traffic resolution, the notion that even though officers need to work, different departments need to work with each other, if it's traffic resolution, give that information, pass it to the traffic resolution team, let them do the consultation, let them come back with the advice itself as well. And I think that is, we need to, this is, I don't want to get much into it, but I think that is something that for the community, which they, that it's hard to explain going back to the community, oh, you are 75 meters away from here when we changed it last year and now we're making the change itself. I'm okay with making a change. I'm okay even if we decide with what been already advised by officers, but not giving an opportunity for those communities not to have a say. It is not okay, and we need to work on that. And I really hope you all will support this amendment. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise, having had the responses from officers believing that they believe it will be adequate to address the safety problems there, I'm quite happy to support this amendment as well. Is there any final debate? Right of reply? Councillor Randall.
Yes, look, thank you. I want to thank everybody. This is
a right of reply, Councillor
Yes,
Randall.
this is a contentious thing, but I want to thank everyone working together, both around the committee table but beforehand. And I advise people who want to have a contentious thing to get engaged early. Officers have been very helpful in terms of listening and taking on board to get the right balance. And I think we've got the right balance with this one. So I really want to tick off everyone to say this is a win-win. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Randall. We'll take them all together. Those in favour, press 1. The amendment, yes. Yep. I just meant 2.3 and 2.31. Is carried. That moves us back to debating the substantive. Would anyone like to debate? Councillor Tiefenbacher. That is, yes.
Okay, firstly, I think I would really like people to vote to retain the bus stops in Rural Street. I think the time savings are minimal. I think the Greater Wellington Regional Council may be bringing this proposal to us, but it doesn't sound as though they're committed to it. It sounds as though they're doing it because they've been approached. We say we're a council that wants to see more people on buses, and I think there's no reason why we would take away bus stops if there's no substantial time saving. It doesn't actually improve things, it actually goes exactly the opposite way, so I'd like us to do that. Dawson Street, fantastic that we've changed that because that's much better. I do think that there is an issue that we have stated in our recommendations that there's 10 houses and 25 car parks when that gives a slightly false picture. I do think that the comments from the member of the public who earlier said that he felt that it was distorting the truth maybe has something that we should be aware of. And in Tawa, the mobility park, I take on board the fact we need another mobility park and we should do it. I think the logic of doing it just in that spot just for the money when it doesn't work, I disagree with that. The time frame, I do not agree with having it all day just because I think it should be turned over so that more people with mobility issues can use it.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, just in terms of the bus stops, Lyell Bay, I understand both sides of this issue, and there's always going to be that tension between accessibility and making sure our service is efficient and that people want to use it. But I think the reality is here that the recommended distance between bus stops is 400 metres. This is 150 metres, and you can make exemptions depending on if it's a hilly area or if it's a high density area. But the reality is, again, that this is on the flat and it is and not a high density area. So I'm comfortable with supporting this. Thanks.
Is there any further debate? Fantastic. Very quick right of reply. I agree with Councillor O'Brien, and I think what was important to note in the submission that was provided by the Tawa bid this morning as well is that despite the Tawa bid not being supportive of restricted time on the mobility park, CCS Disability Action was more supportive of having a time-limited park to encourage that turnover. So there was a difference of opinions there. I'm hearing that we would like to take both the mobility park and Queen's Drive separately. Is there anything else we need to take separately? Fantastic. We'll do the Tawa Mobility Park first. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2. And this is for the Tawa Mobility Park. The next one up is TR 0226, which is for Queens Drive and Rua Street, the Lyall Bay bus stops. And then we will take all of the rest. And that is carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to item 2.3. There are not too many items remaining. That is the road stopping. Please welcome Ross to introduce the report.
Kia ora koutou. This paper is asking the committee to recommend the council approves the proposed road stopping at 30 Lyredet Street, Vogeltown. Proposal is to stop and sell approximately 10 metres squared of legal road to the owner of the property. All internal teams asked to comment on the proposal have supported. Should the proposal be approved, the land will be surveyed and public notification as required under Local Government Act 1974 will commence. I'll take the paper as read and answer any questions.
Are there any questions for officers? I see none. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Randall. I don't feel the need to speak. Councillor Randall, would you like to speak? Any debate? Fantastic. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2, and this is all together. I declare the motion carried. That moves us on to item 2.4, the proposal to name the park at Owen Street. Please welcome Sanjay Patel to introduce the report.
Kia ora koutou. This paper recommends the approval of the name Kahukura Park for the new park at the southern end of Owen Street, Newtown. It's a site of the former Workingmen's Bowling Club. If approved, we'll work with our Takere partners to arrange a blessing of the name. I'll take the paper as read and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I see none. Thank you very much, Sanjay. I believe Poe Holden Hohaia is going to move.
I guess I'll reserve my right.
You can speak to introduce it if you'd like, or...
Okay, I guess I will. Yeah, I'm delighted to move this name change. The kahukura is a butterfly which you don't often see. It's kind of black. It's got a combination of black, red, and white coloration, and it's a taonga. So delighted to move this paper.
Kia ora. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Rewati, do you wish to speak now? No. Is there any other debate? Councillor Phone.
Yep. Just absolutely delighted to see this naming coming through, and there's been a beautiful involvement with the local community on the naming of this park, particularly by local resident Paul Forrest, who has been working really hard in our community to make sure our biodiversity is thriving. And he also works with our local school in Newtown, Ngā Puna Wai. Yep, I should know that. But really involving all the school children in the artwork. So it's a pretty special space for our community, but I think just having the Te Reo name will just, we're waiting for that crowning glory. So it's going to be a very beautifully used space and already loved. And just one more thing, the Newtown residents were also good in their feedback that they said that this was a great consultation with the community over a long period of time. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abdurrahman.
Look, I must admit I was against demolishing that working man's bowling club. But now looking at it, I think Sanjay and his team, they did a really, really good job. And not only in making the space very beautiful, but in engaging with the community itself as well. So thanks to Sanjay and the team for your engagement. And looking forward to taking my kids and enjoying the park.
Fantastic. Do you feel the need to reply, Pui Hohaya? No. We'll take it to a vote. Those in favour, press 1. Those against, press 2. I declare the motion carried. That takes us on to item 2.6, our decision register and upcoming reports. I believe we're taking the paper as read, but if there's any questions for Jenny. I see none. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Brien, is there any debate? I see none. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2. And as alluded to at the start of the meeting, we will need to move into public excluded pursuant to Section 48(1)(a) of the Local Government and Official Information and Meetings Act. As you see on screen, the reason for moving into public excluded is to withhold information necessary to protect the privacy of natural persons. I will move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Matthews, is there any debate? No. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2. We'll just take a brief moment to change the doors and turn off the live stream. Now declare the meeting closed. Please join me in the karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te urutapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū, koia rā e rongo, whakairi ia aki kurunga, kia wātia, ai rā, ku wātia.